How's it going, everyone? My name is David McDermott. I am 23 years old. I am a middle level math and science education major at Illinois State University, and I have just finished my senior block. I am doing one last optional assignment right before I move on to student teaching and head on back home. And I wanted to make this video to talk to people and give advice to those who are going into their senior blocks and who are going into their internships, which is very exciting and definitely going to be the most fun time you've ever had if that's what you're about to be going into. So, doing this as an optional assignment, actually, I figured that giving advice to people that are going into their senior block could be very beneficial, because I know that just freshly coming out of my senior block, that I would have loved to have heard from someone that had just gone through the experience. And I know firsthand that a lot of my peers would agree with that, because a lot of us definitely wish that we could have known more going into our senior block, and definitely known more going into our internship, especially from someone around the same age, someone in college that especially has just gone through it very fresh. So the topics that I'm going to be going over today, just so you guys all know, I want to talk about preparing for your internship, especially how to get the most out of your CT and your teachers, how to build relationships with your students, and go into a little bit more depth on some things that you might not go into as far as lesson planning goes in your classrooms, and what to do outside of the class, like extracurriculars and who to know and that sort of stuff. And finally, just a few extra tips about the senior block in general. So to dive right into things, I want to talk first about preparing for the internship. So as some will probably tell you, 99% chance that this is going to be all of the most difficult time that you've had so far in your major, but also the most fun, the most rewarding, and overall just the most beneficial to your knowledge in preparing to be a future teacher. And it really was the best experience, even though, like I said, it was very, very difficult. So the first thing that I would say right away is try to get away from a job if you have one right now. I know it's super difficult. I am someone, I'm a broke college kid too, but if you can get away from your job, if there's any possible way, at least take down almost all of the hours and really focus in and harness this internship, because you can get so much out of it, and it'll really help prepare you for student teaching and really just help prepare you more than anything else that you've done in the major so far. So after that, like I said, you want to keep your focus there. And another thing that I would say, like going into an internship, is bring in a journal with you. Just like a little pocket journal, something that you can keep on you at all times, even while you're circulating a classroom. Keeping a journal is very important. I think it's something that I wish I would have started right at the beginning. I actually started it during my last week, and I was able to remember majority of things, but I feel like I could have written down a lot of really awesome information that I was seeing from the beginning. But you can write down anything from what you thought of your teacher's classroom arrangement, how you think maybe it could have benefited, from changing things up, some different strategies of your CT that you thought were interesting and you think you might be able to incorporate yourself when you're a teacher one day. So just keeping track of these different things can really help you when you go into both your official student teaching as well as your first year of being on your own and being a teacher. Because if you can keep track of these things, then especially when you're about to become a teacher, you can start planning this stuff in the summer and really kind of get a head start on things that you have. You just look in your journal and see, like, hey, this really worked for this teacher. Maybe I can start setting up my classroom that way. Maybe I can. You just really use it for planning your next year. So I think keeping like a little pocket journal or something that would be awesome. Next, I want to talk about really taking advantage of all of the resources and the knowledge that comes from your CT and comes from your teachers. Um, I know that we think that we know a ton going into our internship. We've been in all of these classes, and we're in our last year. We're in our senior year, and we know so much at this point. We think, but these teachers have been doing this for so much longer than we have, and the CT has they actually have jobs in the field, and they've been working most likely for a good amount of time already. So definitely listen to them, respect them, even if you don't even if you're not agreeing with some of their educational philosophies at first. Really just take the time to listen to what they're saying anyway, because they're talking out of experience. They're not just making things up. They've been there. They've been in the classroom for a lot of years. They're good. They want the best for us, and they're going to be telling us. So don't try not to backfire and try to tell them what they're like that they're doing something wrong, because like I said, they've been doing it for a while. So just really respect them, take advice. Even if you're not agreeing with it, just take it in. Think about it. Think about the benefits that you can get out of what they're saying in the long run, because most likely there will be many, even if you didn't agree at first. So don't be quick to reject them. Also, when you get into your internship, teach as soon as you can. It can be great. I know we're not going to be you're not going to be ready. No one's going to be ready right away. But we're brand new. You're not going to be ready still by the second week. Like get in there the first week, get in there right away. Like you're not missing out on anything. You're not going to be you're not expected to know what you're doing regardless of when you start. So definitely try to get in. Start teaching one of the first days that you're in there as soon as the teacher feels comfortable. Don't push her to do it, but definitely let her know that you're willing to get in there and you're willing to teach as soon as you can. Next, I want to definitely say just again, don't let your pride stop you from doing anything. That was something that I definitely wish I would have thought of more before it. Like um, it was kind of a little bit not shy, but too prideful to ask a lot of questions. And I think I could have benefited a lot more if I were to ask my CT the whole time, like, hey, what can I be doing better? And really trying to benefit the most from both my teacher, my CT, and my other teachers. So definitely don't be afraid to ask questions throughout, because you are brand new. And if you don't ask questions, sometimes they're not going to know that you have them. So definitely don't be afraid to ask. Next, I want to talk about forming relationships with the students. You definitely want to start doing this right away. It can help you tremendously when trying to teach them, and it can really lead to much easier classroom management and much better focus from your kids. And this comes from just greetings right away when your students are walking in the classroom, trying to learn their names as soon as they can. I've experienced how much that means to them when you know their name. Also, with middle school kids, compliments go so far. You compliment someone's shirt, or you hear them talking about a movie or show, and you tell them like, "Wow, yeah, like I love that movie or show too." They're a little bit taken aback because they don't know that teachers, we have our lives outside of school too, and we could have similar interests, and those typically mean a lot to them. Also try to not only get to know them, but try to help them know you. Fortunately, my teacher asked me to make a presentation the second day that I was there, and I think really showing the students a lot of different interests that I have really helped them better understand me. And all of a sudden they had tons of questions about me loving the Cubs, or me loving certain genres of music, or different interests that I had. And that definitely helped me gain a lot of relationships with the students much faster than I believe I would have otherwise. So if you can ask your teacher, if they don't ask you already, to present yourself. The kids, though, they're definitely everything that they tell you all so much different from each other. They're all different shapes and sizes. They, their, intellectual levels, their behavioral levels, their attention spans, everything. Like they're all different from each other, and that goes into, preparing for your lesson plans as well. It's definitely important that, we learn a lot about lesson planning in the classes, but it's it's really important to think about how to change your lesson plans as far as like since your students are all so different, like I was just saying, they're all going to be understanding what you're saying at different times and at different different speeds. So you definitely want to think about when you're going to be doing group discussion versus when you're going to be doing small work versus one-on-one based on your students. And you're not going to know them right away. It's going to take a little bit of time. It's best to ask your teacher right away. Try to get understand as much background information as you can about about the students before you start teaching them. So right away from day one, definitely ask your teacher everything as much as they're willing to tell you and share with you. Um, Another one of the best pieces of advice that I got from one of my professors is they would always ask me who should be doing more work, you or the students. And that answer should always hopefully be the students, because first of all, if your students are doing more work than you in the classroom, most likely, if they're doing things, that means they're involved. They're going to be more engaged if they're the ones doing things. Not only are they going to be more engaged and more involved, but they're automatically going to be um, they're just going to automatically be more into what you are trying to teach them. So definitely that's one of the biggest things to keep in mind, I'd say, because it's also going to help tremendously with your classroom management skills as well. Because if they're engaged and they're listening and they're all on task, then they're going to be it's they're going to be they're going to be listening. They're not going to be talking if they're working on stuff. So next, I want to talk about things that you should be doing outside of the classroom. So extracurriculars are great. Just going to basketball games, and I went to a talent show, and just being able to see what students are doing outside of the classroom, first of all, helps you build relationships so much easier, because you could talk about wow, you were killing it the other day in the game. You were hitting all the threes, or wow, I didn't know that you could play that instrument or that you could dance that well. And they get very excited. Like I said, they take compliments very well. So when you get to know their interests, they're willing to open up a lot more with you. Next, it's really important to ask your CT to try to be in any meetings with them. So obviously, you're going to be in all the team meetings that they have during the school hours, but definitely make sure to get in anything before school and after school. I know my CT definitely gave me a lot of options to go to things. They're like, you might not necessarily get that much out of going to this, and you don't have to go to this one if you don't want to. But I would usually always try to tag along, and ended up still gaining a lot more than they thought I would through that experience. Lastly, who you should get to know. So the janitor and the secretary became some good friends of mine while I was there. And the janitor and secretaries, they know more than almost anyone in the school. They really do. And they know all of the grades too. They know 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade. And, just having really important conversations with them, they helped me, better understand the way they act, why they, act that way. And they're also just really great resources. They know, usually they help me find where everything was. They pointed me in the right direction for, not just things with, 8th grade, which is where I was placed, but for basically anything in the school. So that was really nice. Also, it's really important to try to schedule a meeting with the principal if you can. This is something that, unfortunately, I never took advantage of, but I know that one of my peers did, and they actually ended up having a switch in their student teaching to that school, which was not only a benefit for them because it was closer, but now they have a relationship with the principal, who can obviously be a really great contact to have. And also, they just have a different view on things. Most likely, they've been a teacher in the past, so they have a different view than the rest of the teachers that are there. And if you are also interested in eventually going into administration, that's just another insight into that as well. So the last thing that I want to talk about today is just a few final thoughts that I think are really important in your senior block. The first one being just really trying to get your class together and get your professors together. Probably around like 3 times if you can per semester. I know that that you're in a senior block and your teachers have plans, but you're having 4-hour meetings with your teachers, and a lot of the time you'll have different times to like work on things, and you have some say typically in what you want to learn. So if you can just really try to egg on your professors to meet maybe like a third of the way through, right before student teaching and right after student teaching, just for like an hour of the class. Just spend like an hour of the class talking about what you think is going well. If you think that certain things that you're learning you already know, or if you think that they may no longer be relevant, or if you think that you might want to learn more about something that you only covered a little bit, or really anything. It's really good for the the students, us students, to be talking to the professors, because unfortunately my group waited towards the real end to all of a sudden, really, we were more like complaining, even though we had our professors did a great job teaching us, but we we didn't get together and talk really about what was going on, and we didn't really give enough say. And I think that the teachers are really willing to work with us, and we noticed that at the end. And if like when we talked to the teachers, we're like, wow, yeah, I really wish we could have done that too. Maybe we can do that next time. But if you start bringing up these points early on, you guys can probably end up figuring things out from the get-go and really get things going better for for your education, and being better prepared than we were. And the last and final thing that I want to say is hang out with your squad. When I say that, I mean hang out with the rest of your peers and within your block. We decided to all start hanging out and really collaborating for some reason at the real end. And there's a lot of really bright minds, and there are also a lot of really awesome people that we all wish that we would have been more social and willing to hang out with each other throughout, because I think we could have done much greater things throughout the semester if we would have been collaborating a bit more, and also really just had a bit more fun, and a bit less stress maybe. So those are the main points that I wanted to get across today. I hope this advice helped for any of you future teachers and people that are going into your senior block and about to finish up. And honestly, it's a great feeling. And when you do get through your senior block and get through your internship, I think you're going to be very happy, because I am, and I'm super ready for student teaching, and ready to get on after that to start finding jobs and getting into the majors. So see you guys later.